Hello and welcome to the second of our series of Cloud Insight Roundtables. The first webinar, utilizing cloud to give your data a new edge, discussed how organizations can use cloud to manage the data mountain and deliver better value from it. The aim of today is to share insight, advice, and best practice from insiders so that you can harness the right cloud solutions to help your business succeed. So our topic today is tips to succeed with managed databases. Now, I said in the first webinar that IDC predicts 9 zettabytes of data produced globally by 2024. That is an eye-watering 1 terabyte for every human on the planet. Now, much of this data is being gathered by organizations, added to by Internet of Things, and moved to the edge, increasing use of AI, and obviously keeping your valuable assets safe. Couple that with complexity and limited budgets, and we all have an environment that challenges us. So how do you get your arms around all the moving parts to be confident that you aren't missing a trick? So to help with this, new tools are being introduced almost daily, and database as a service is one of them. That's what this session is all about. We have 3 subject matter experts that are in the center of this industry and will offer their insights and tips for you. You are in charge today. So take this opportunity to drive the direction of your discussion, steer the conversation to what is most useful for you by submitting questions in the chat function. So panelists, you have different experiences and outlooks. Please do a short intro and include what is database as a service and why is it changing the landscape from your perspective. Okay, so Heikki, over to you first, please.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me. So my name is Heikki Nousiainen and I'm a CTO and co-founder at Aiven. And Aiven in short is a database as a service provider. So we provide managed databases and data processing services as a managed service with a mission to help organizations and help development teams to be more productive, to get focused really on application building.
Ooh. Okay, well, welcome. Stephane, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Stephane Ligneul. I'm a solution architect. I joined OVH 6 months ago, and before that, I was solution architect for service provider for more than 20 years now, so quite a long time. And I was used to work with database, first mainly focus on a commercial license database engine, as we can imagine. But now I saw the trend, to go for open source databases. And there is also another trend pushing for, because of different challenges, that the customer are facing, for database as a service. So that's why I'm here today.
Marvelous, and I'm showing a slide that you kindly sent me. Why organizations are adopting database as a service. Is there any key things that really stand out for you that's driving this change?
Yeah, all of them are quite correct for sure. There is a first, let's say, notice that open source database became the most popular system that we are using to store data. I think the DB engine site is monitoring this, and by end of 2020, they realized that there is more open source database now reachable on the internet than other commercial license engines.
Marvelous.
The challenge that you are showing there are definitely the ones which are related to the fact that database want to focus on developing in a quicker way all the application to deliver more services to their users. And for sure provisioning skills is an issue. The volume is increasing in terms of data. The cost is definitely something that we need to keep focus on. And the last one is about the fact that security is also a hot topic that we can address, with database as a service. If you are short in terms of knowledge, how to maintain and how to secure, your data on your platform.
Okay. Good insights. Good insights. Benedikt, over to you.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for having me here. So yeah, I'm Benedikt. I'm the lead backend and AI engineer at iATROS. We are a startup in the area of digital health. We do telemedicine, where we were funded in 2019. We treat cardiovascular diseases and do aftercare. So we have a lot of patients. We are growing, and yeah, patients give us critical data like their heart rate, blood pressure. So we have continuous inflow of data. So database as a service is really helpful for us, since and this allows us to move very fast, which is very important for a startup.
Okay, and it's in a really important area, which I guess it's you know, affects everybody's health, life, so absolutely critical.
Exactly.
Okay, so welcome, panel. Given your experiences, I'm really looking forward to an insightful discussion. Okay, so let's start with some of the basic questions here. Share with the listeners, how does a business even know it needs this kind of a solution? What are the telltale signs? Stephane, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Usually, customers realize that it's quite difficult, to get the right level of skills, to maintain the database. Sometimes they realize that even they are not up to date for the engine. So they are below, they are not online with the latest release of the product. The complexity of the platform is also something which is increasing, because you want more availability, you want to implement some cluster configuration, you want to have some disaster recovery, some backup to be managed. Sometimes customers are not feeling so secure, about their data. Performance issue is also a topic which is quite sometimes difficult to address by themselves. So, and I think the most accurate problem that they have, if they would like to use their resources to focus more on the business development than just maintaining, the platform, which is not creating for them direct value. So what we are providing as a service is just to take all those load activity, which is time consuming, which is about to maintain the platform, to provide scalability, availability, to manage the security, all the operational, tasks like backups, installation, or updates. It's something which is standard, and provided by the services that we are delivering when we manage your databases engine.
Okay, so
yeah, you do have all the orange blocks, which are going to be, covered by the service provider, and the only thing that you need to keep focus on is to develop your apps and to use the databases as a services.
Perfect, and that's why I love this slide. It's a nice and simple way of getting across what the as a service model includes. So I love that slide, nice and simple. So thank you very much for that, Stephane. Now I know, Benedikt, you've actually adopted this solution in your company. What were the key drivers that prompted you to go down this route?
Yeah, so what Stephane said is definitely true for us. So yeah, we require high uptime, and you need the skills to have that in your team to provide that. So all these problems, you need to solve them, and with database as a service, you can yeah, you're fine if you have less expertise or provide less manpower to that topic. To do those database operations, setting up all this architecture, it's way easier. And then there's also the point that it's scalable. So if you are a business and you know that there will the demand will grow, you can just yeah, click some buttons and then your node will be upgraded. So that's also yeah, reassuring us that that when we know we need that, that we can do that.
Okay. Heikki, what about your take on this?
Yes, so I think very kind of echoing both Stephane's and Benedikt's kind of points here. for us, our mission is very much on the productivity. So we see this perhaps if there are bottlenecks in the organization, getting new projects off the ground, how to get to actually solving the business problems instead of spending time on infrastructure. Similar points are when we're moving workloads from perhaps development into production. How do we organize that 24/7 monitoring and operations? Or questions on are the infrastructure and database services and others, are they always patched with the latest security patches, or are they in general, can we maintain security compliance with these systems, or do we have a adequate governance on the data that we store, and we actually know what is stored and where? And of course, then, as mentioned before, when the sheer number of data that we collect and utilize, when it grows, how do we cope with that growth or explosive growth of the data volumes themselves? All of these things are items that can be helped with a database as a service, and kind of spend that time and expertise on solving the true business critical problems.
Okay, right. Okay, right. But I'm guessing in all of this, gents, database as a service doesn't make sense in every situation. So let's just quickly, remind the listeners where it may not make sense. Now, Benedikt, it's probably worthwhile starting with you. You've probably got lots of other database solutions in your company, but you've gone down the as a service route. Tell us more. What made you go down the as a service route, and why did it not make sense to switch off some of the other approaches that you've got?
Yeah, we have some, I wouldn't call it legacy solutions, but we have some partnerships where we cannot just control the infrastructure. So we rely on some partners to use the database there. So that's something where you might have no option to switch. Also, if you have some legacy solution in place where it doesn't make any sense to upgrade that. And I could imagine that also in some cases for us it's not that relevant, but if you are relying on like edge computing, or if you have lots of data written locally, then maybe like going for the cloud is also not an option, and you maybe need the database running locally. Then of course you need to manage it yourself. And also on non-critical systems, like on development systems, it might be easier or cheaper to work with a self-hosted databases, because there it might not be a problem if you, for example, lose data or don't have high uptime, etc.
Okay, so there's lots of practical reasons why you've gone down this route. Okay, and Heikki, from your angle, you've implemented lots of these type of solutions. Where does it not make sense?
Yeah, so I might be a bit biased here as a database as a service vendor, and we see that the benefits of using database as a service are so great that there are very few cases where it doesn't make sense. But of course, there are existing systems and maybe from industries that are regulated, finance, medical. There might be data sets that which simply cannot move, or we have a hosted infrastructure that keeps things running. But even there, kind of given how valuable data is and the kind of services that we can build on data, maybe we can export some facets on it to do innovative new services, say issue insurances on demand, on kind of self-service online model where you get the response right away. So
Okay, Stephane, what do you think here? Where does it not make sense?
I think there is a first reason where it's not possible to use database as a service. It's because some customers do have some platform where they have to use or to continue to use some commercial license database. I'm thinking about Microsoft or Oracle solution, for example. So for sure here it's quite complicated, to provide a database as a service. There is a second reason that I do have in mind. where you do have some very large or very specific or optimized database cluster in place. I do have in mind, for example, a customer which is providing a kind of marketplace where they are collecting billions of records per year, and for which they do have implemented an Elasticsearch with more than nearly 100 nodes split across 3 regions. So for this one, they do have the right skill first to manage this, and there is a specific tuning that they want to keep. But the idea is maybe not to focus on this one. They are also using other databases, and for this we are providing database as a service for the other engines, and that means for them they are freeing some time for the DBA expert to continue to focus on the Elasticsearch engine and to optimize it. And then we are helping them, to manage the other database instances.
Okay, right. So that I would have thought would help our listeners at least to understand where it doesn't make sense, and there are obvious reasons, I guess. But back to your point, Heikki. So you're in this game of as a service provider. Lots of solutions out there, aren't there? So tell the listeners, how do you choose between all of the solutions that are out there?
Yeah, so indeed, there's a lot of solution. I think it is becoming kind of de facto model of delivering, say, data related solutions. And I think that's great for the customer, and that's an indicator that the model is maturing. I always would recommend starting from the technology and making sure that the technology is a good fit for the business problem. So whether it's a relational database for transactional workloads or NoSQL solution, if you have a lot of events, for example, that you want to store and process, time series data that is very good at working with metrics and measurements and kind of rather than perhaps distinct events. So kind of finding out what's the correct solution for the problem. No single solution can cover all the different use cases. We obviously advocate a lot on open source, just for the kind of control and freedom and business agility that open source solutions give you. Security compliance or compliance in general, how do the solution provider security posture or certifications or other supportive documentation and implementations, how do they fit the organization's requirements and perhaps the organization's compliance requirements as well. As kind of Benedikt working on a area that is regulated, so how does the provider fit in that market? And last but not least, we very much recommend and advocate for services that can be managed as a code, infrastructure as code, and this is kind of then coming back to that the pace where we are doing developments and deployments, the number of DevOps teams that we have in the organizations now tackling these business problems, so that the organization can manage and have some governance on how these things are deployed and how the access is managed. Those might be my top criteria.
Okay, well, very insightful stuff there. Stephane, now I know we've talked about this in often online, and you've sent me a slide that I'm going to share with the listeners that I think will be really useful. How about your take on all of this? How do you make sense of all of the solutions out there?
As Heikki mentioned, there is different products which are related to different use case or different type of way to consume the data. Today at OVH, we are providing already a large panel of all the most, let's say, common database engine. There is still more to come. By next month, we will have M3, we will have Grafana, we will have Cassandra, so much more thanks to Aiven for that. And we are, I think, covering all the main, let's say, or the most popular solutions in our portfolio. And beyond that, we are also offering different service plans, which are accurate for dev environment with, let's say, low constraints to a very high intensive cluster configuration where there is demands for high availability, for security, for more accurate backup policy and stuff like this. I think it's really important, to address all the needs in terms of product, but also in terms of service levels. And that's what exactly we are providing at OVH.
Okay, so the service around as well. Okay, right. And it'd be useful to get a different side at which we look at this. Benedikt, you've shortlisted and ended up choosing the solution that you use today. How did you go about that? And tell the listeners more that what made you choose what you did choose in the end.
To unmute myself. Yes, so we use heavily rely on Postgres and Redis. And before we switch to database as a service solutions for that, we used self-managed inside the Kubernetes cluster. But we had a lot of problems regarding updates, scaling the PVC, and we also had failures in our backup strategy, which one time resulted in data loss. So that were not so nice experiences we made with that. About the like architecture we chose here. Also, we need to set up a connection pooler here, so yeah, by Postgres and Redis were available as we have seen already here as a database as a service solution. So we tried that, and migration was not a problem. That since we were already using these common databases. We also tried OVHcloud before, but this service was more intended for running a simple websites. So we, for example, had no private network option there. Yeah, to give you a little bit more the perspective on yeah, how we came to that choice then to choose database as a service.
Okay, right. Now, it seems to me there's a thread running through this, that it's about the service around itself. And Stephane, you mentioned the service around when you covered off all of the wonderful plethora of services out there. Tell us more. How do you get the foundation right so that the program becomes a success?
As soon as you still have, some remarks from your team saying that you need to do some activity like around the database related to operational tasks, like optimizing, like updating, like managing the backup, all of those should be something that you will forget about as soon as you will go for a database as a service. So it's definitely something that will free up, your time focus on the database, and then it will also be something that will not take care anymore as a current, or daily task, for sure. So I would say that if you want really to find the right foundation and you want to be convinced, by the database as a service approach, it's maybe you can, which is something which is quite common for our customer, is to focus first on your dev environment and do some tests on it, and then you can go to the production or critical, database engine as soon as you are convinced that the right service of level is provided by your service provider.
Okay, and does that resonate with you, Benedikt? I mean, is that the kind of thought process you went through?
Yes, so first you need to know your requirements. So what are your requirements in the area of availability, and you need like private networking, automatic backups, disk size, etc. So that's where you should start with. And the development process is a little bit different here if you use database as a service, or if you want to rely on databases. I mean, you're paying for them, so you should be using that. So developers should also execute code if possible, or do computations on the database. So write more complex and thoughtful SQL statements. On Redis, you can consider doing computations using Lua script. So this is a general best practice anyways, but this is even more important to have this as a foundation. And before you do any changes on the architecture, it's also good to have numbers on the performance so that you can actually compare if everything is going well. You cannot judge anything without numbers. So having some logging in there, measuring numbers continuously, observing if everything is going smooth, that's also a good foundation to do decisions on your architecture.
Okay, some interesting aspects there. Heikki, what have you got to add to what's been said?
Yes, some really interesting points, but maybe from our side, I would say that two things: kind of embracing and recommending kind of a strategic decision to utilize as much as a service as the teams can to be able to focus. I think that's the kind of key. Then the teams will pick up on these services and get the full benefits. In organizations that are a little bit larger, we've seen some really great success through developer experience teams that can then kind of evaluate, select, and then recommend tooling to the teams and help the individual developers on getting started and provide tips and guidance, or for example, provide those infrastructure as code templates to maintain a kind of standard way of utilizing these services. We've seen that quite successful with some of our customers.
Okay, right. Look, we've talked about doing things successfully, you know, but to measure success, we need the right metrics, and we need to understand what those metrics are before, after, during, and they need to be linked to the right business benefits. So how can you suggest to listeners to get that aspect of the metrics right? Benedikt, how did you do it? How do you measure success at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. It's really difficult to answer that. So I already mentioned performance, but more important is how often are people blocked by your infrastructure, for example, in development. So if people cannot develop something, if your company or if anyone is blocked by your infrastructure, then that's very bad. So this is something you should be observing. How often does it happen? And there's also some things which you cannot really measure. It's like this risk factor, for example, the backup solutions or security. They are not like key metrics you can just get there, but it's more like you need to assess the risk. So that makes it so difficult to assess.
Okay, right. Stephane, you've implemented enough. How do you suggest to your customers what the right metrics are?
I think as soon as you have a database as a service in place, you will feel more comfortable, and you will definitely forget about how to measure, the efficiency of database as a service. But for sure, if you are doing some development, I think a way to measure it is maybe to check the number of activity which are related to the database engine tuning on operation, task. And then you will realize that after a few weeks, it will move from solving issue, doing some upgrade, managing the backups, to some new activity which are more related to measure the performance, as Benedikt said, but also to review the database schema and to also imagine some new use cases to get benefits of the users the data that you are already collecting. And if you need to evaluate the TCO, I think you have to try to identify all the database related to all of the different services that we are providing. But you also have to evaluate the risk in case you don't have the right skill to manage it, and you don't have all the platform up to date, for example. And this is something which is quite difficult to evaluate for sure, but it will be something which will be definitely covered, by database as a service.
Okay, right. And Heikki, I quite like the slide that I'm going to share with the listeners. You want to give us your take on this?
I'm gonna first piggyback on Benedikt and Stephane here. So for us, the really what is really important is the developer productivity and how fast we can do changes, how fast we can get a new project up and running. That being blocked, or if we can measure on how much do we have this wait time or kind of resources not being able to really work on the problems. Those are really valid metrics, sometimes a little bit difficult to measure. Same thing, ratio between time spent on that infrastructure management or resources spent on that infrastructure management versus new application development tasks. That's a kind of, say, a margin, or I don't know how would you measure or name that measurement, but something at least that provokes thought. We did a study with IDC among Aiven customers to find the benefits of using Aiven database services. And while organizations are very different, in our study, we did find 37% savings from the database as a service usage on average, or the number that I love, 4 times faster deployment and getting up to speed, or to more than 10% gains in productivity in general. So these numbers, they are, of course, they're averages, they vary from organizations, but I think they are very much in line with what our mission is, to make developers more productive and make business being more agile and able to respond to changing business needs.
Okay. Look, I'll tell you what, the interesting insights, especially how you measure success. But it never goes smoothly, does it, gents? So we know that there's a lot of challenges, whether it's during implementation, whether it's in life. So now it's time to share your insights in terms of how do you sidestep and overcome those challenges, just point out the ones that most people underestimate, sometimes overlook altogether. So Heikki, you were talking about metrics. How do you, what challenges do you think that are overlooked?
So when DevOps and database as a service models are taken into use, the one challenge that we at least see that then is the opposite side of things. Things start to spiral out of control. So governance becomes an issue quickly, and it's something that we would often recommend is investing at least to have policies in place. Who can deploy? How do we track the assets that we deploy? Who maintains the access controls and ensures that, for example, when people move between projects, that we update those access controls. So this is an area, kind of a happy problem to have from people being productive, but something that is worthwhile thinking upfront. On the technical implementation side, I can't emphasize the benefits of using infrastructure as code enough, and that's a really helpful way of making sure that we track all the assets with something that we can run through our development processes and run through version control, and having that implicit documentation of all the assets that we have within the organization.
Right. So look, lots of things to think about there. I'm thinking here, Stephane, you're probably the right person here as well. What do you think with all of this?
Yeah, I think the main challenge that customers are facing when they want to move to database as a service, it's usually, the first hot topic is about data migration. How to migrate, and there is usually 2 use cases. One is they want to migrate from their on-prem or self-managed, database to a database as a service system. So for sure, migration is going to consume some overload in terms of activity for a short time. But keep in mind also that OVH do have some professional services that can support, our customer to do that, and they are used to do it. And usually, I think maybe the most accurate approach for that will not be like a big bang to replace everything at the same time for all the data, but maybe to migrate the first non-critical system, and as soon as they feel comfortable with the first, let's say, instance running on database as a service, is then to migrate the rest of the platform as soon as they feel it possible.
Okay, right. Lots of juicy tips there. Benedikt, you're on the sharp end. You have to make all of this work. So what's the kind of challenges that you have come up against that took you by surprise?
Yes, I think the point Heikki made about making sure that the access control is right. It's also I mean, as we are growing, getting more important topic because there are more people who can potentially access the data, and with health data, it's also critical data. So not everyone should be able to access the medical data. But for us, migrations was also a topic, and you need to plan in some time for that, because some migrations can take quite a long time. And this topic of migrations is not that easy for us. And I would like to see more software as a service solutions to support that, because that's still something where you need to do a lot of manual work.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting thought. Take it from that angle, and if there's something that can help, that yes, something for our development folks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know we don't just use databases as a service. We've mentioned it. We know how interconnected all of this is, and it's just one of the jigsaw pieces that needs to come together when it comes to managing data. So that we can help our listeners just to make sure all of that comes together, what solutions tie into this? How do they ensure that there's an integrated solution that can really help their business? Now, you've done this, Benedikt. You've just been talking about it. Why don't you start that discussion?
So I have already mentioned that you need to you should put some computation inside the databases. So having developers with database expertise is still needed to make use of all aspects. So go beyond that basic usage of a database to write better application logic. And that's the thing you still need to do when you use some database. You need to define the models and have the domain knowledge and making the choice of using the right tools for the right type of data. All these decisions are also part of what you as a company should provide. So the database as a service is not the magic bullet who will solve all your developer problems. There's more to an application than just the database. Using Grafana would also be something I can recommend to combine that to get more insights of what you have in your database, or using tools like Power BI to get insights out of your data.
Cool. I think, look, Heikki, you've mentioned a few things about how complex all of this can get. Why don't you take up the baton from Benedikt then? How do you view this, and how do customers make better sense of this complex jigsaw?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and indeed, that a database as a service or data is is never used in isolation. We need to collect it, we need to capture it, we need to store it, we need to transform it, process it, and analyze and make decision, make information of the underlying data. And sometimes it's indeed not only one technology, but perhaps we need to we want to reuse that data in different flows. We have different timeliness requirements. Sometimes we need real-time decisions based on data that we capture, but also then a kind of longer storage batch where we can train our machine learning models, if you will, so not a single technology might cover all the use cases for same data. So looking for also that maybe what is the journey or what is the flow of our data from the collection point on how we utilize it now and into the future is important. Other services is of course each business application is different. So that's the part that is not, say, commoditized as much as kind of ability to process data or database. So there we recommend this DevOps model, and cloud being a great enabler for those DevOps models. So those teams can indeed deploy and develop their workloads and not be blocked or not be waiting on someone for deployment of their workloads. I think that's an important thing to factor in as well.
Okay, right. Stephane, build on that, please.
Yeah. So I think definitely database as a service is not going to change the ways that you manage your data. It will just simply remove all the activity related to the infrastructure management and the ways that you manage your infrastructure only. So there is no real impact on the integrated solution then. But I think it will offer you, the capability now to focus on what could be the right tools that you may need additionally. And using database as a service means that you will have access to it easily and easy to put in test first, and then to validate that the solution will provide you, some benefits.
Wow. Okay. Look, it feels like, I mean, everybody's circumstances are personal. Every business has its own setup and challenges. So I think you've already mentioned a few examples in your sharing already. But now I think it might be useful just to share some use cases that you think have been most effective, and just tell the listeners what those are and why you've chosen those particular use cases. Heikki, let's start with you. You've mentioned a few already. So do you want to start that?
Sure, yes. So I'll go with the benefits of database as a service in more generalized manner. And earlier I mentioned the kind of value that the developer experience team can bring. I want to highlight our customer Adeo group. They are using database as a service to help them to transition into cloud, and it's in retail space. Retail space is or the industry is in this massive change from kind of or massive change into online retail, and every business in that kind of vertical needs to figure out how to handle that transition. And Adeo, they have a central developer experience team that provides a set of standard services and tools and best practices then to development teams that can run projects on innovation or exploration or experiment these processes. And with this database service, they are productive from day one. They can really focus on the business problem at hand, as well as then using standard set of tooling. They can kind of very efficiently share data between these different projects or reuse the existing data as collected. So this both technical access and then a kind of standard familiar tool to each of the projects that they start with. And they're running to the tune of hundreds of individual projects on top of database, or kind of a database as a service being one element in their developer or delivery from their developer experience team.
Okay, right. So that's really interesting. Stephane, do you want to also give us your take on this? Now, I have shared this already with the listeners. I'm going to share it again, this slide. Found it absolutely fascinating as a use case, but I'm sure you've got other stuff that you want to say.
Yeah, as soon as you use database as a service, all the time consumed for previous operational task will be simply forgiven by the customer forever, and all of this time that you are going to save will be the opportunity for you to now focus on new functionality, to improve your performance on the platform. But it also will generate a lot of creativity from your team. All the developers or people managing data will now be in a position to more focus on what could be the use of those data that you can collect. And on this use case, we are showing the fact that usually we were on the left of the diagram where you were focused on how to manage your data. And now you can also imagine new use case where you are going to ingest all those data in a data lake, and from all this data that you are collecting from different sources, you will be able, to generate some new use cases. And artificial intelligence is definitely a new topic that you can address with such kind of, let's say, available time that you will get from the resources.
Yeah, I really do find that fascinating, that diagram. That illustration really does, in a nutshell, capture, the vast majority of customers that I've spoken to couldn't relate to that. So I hope that helps our listeners. Thank you very much for that, Stephane. Benedikt, you're actually using it for a very specific reason. You mentioned it in your introduction. So tell us what you're actually doing with this and what do you aim to achieve?
Yeah, so what we are doing is similar as in this graphic here. Yes, we get a lot of patient data coming in continuously in our system. We take a look at this to help.
I'll show that again, so you've got it as a guide.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, like our architecture is not exactly like this, but similar. So yeah, we store all the incoming data. We do like streaming analytics on that, and take a look of every incoming data. For that, we use Redis quite a lot to speed up our for caching and synchronizing our nodes. And at the end, we do some machine learning on this data. So that's why it's also similar to that graphic here. So having the option to scale is really important because we have a continuous flow of data. It's growing bigger. So that's an important fact here, and also having the option to just spin up a new service, which kind of relies, for example, using some open source tool, which requires some database. Then we can spin up some database for that and be ready very quickly. Yeah.
Okay, right. So, and tell us, is it working the way you expected it to work? Is it achieving what you want?
Yeah, it's so far it's working quite well. So bottleneck right now is not really the database, but application logic, and I mean, because we have this database covered, so that's really helping us achieving our goals and do what we want to do.
Okay, good. That's what we like to hear. Okay, now we've mentioned this a few times, and we know that the reason for this whole solution set existing is to help people do things faster. We've got skill shortages, pretty much hitting everyone I speak to. they do. Obviously, businesses have to turn to partners and try and figure out how they close that skills gap. So you do have to choose the right partners here. So Benedikt, let's continue with you. How did you choose the right partners here, and how did you decide where they could help?
Yeah, first it's important that your tech stack matches, so you don't want to rebuild your whole architecture just because it doesn't really match. Scalability, I already mentioned this several times, that's needs to be there. And we're also looking for certificates since we have this critical data. We also need those certificates. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, that's the way it works, isn't it? With partner Stephane, we've partnered with many customers. How do you suggest that customers choose the right partners?
I think first they do have already a challenge, to have the right skills to manage their data and the database engine. Keeping them and having them up to date is also an additional challenge. But the promise of database as a service is to provide them some new value. So instead of managing the data infrastructure anymore, they will be able to focus on really what could be the usage of the data, and pushing for continuously, improvement or new use cases that they can benefit, from these services. So it will increase the value of the data itself instead of focusing on the data infrastructures, which is much more like a facility, which is the standard trend, for all the cloud platform services.
Okay, and look, Heikki, what would you add to that?
Yeah, echoing much of the same. So obviously, technology support, technology match, or technology support is probably going to be the first choice. So does the partner can they work with all the technologies or many of the technologies that are in use? Similarly, that security compliance and compliance with the requirements for how to manage data, whether it's data that falls under this privacy legislation, or whether the data in question is governed by other compliance requirements or internal security requirements. That's obviously really important. Ability to scale, how the provider can or partner can help then when the data volumes double or tenfold, and whether that partner is able to help you in regions where you need to operate. Also, I would warmly recommend everyone then to do a careful evaluation of these partners and try out with a small service first, and create a couple of support tickets, see what's the response on how the partner is able to help and how they kind of react to you as a customer.
Okay, nice and pragmatic advice there. It's got to be good. Look, doesn't time fly? We're already coming to the towards the end of our call, so I think it's worthwhile starting to summarize for our listeners. What are the key takeaways they should focus on? And there is just so much to consider here. Stephane, why don't you start on the summarizing for us?
I think if your focus is really to develop your business or to develop new use cases, for your customer, I think considering, the database engine as an infrastructure, it will become easily a facility. And database engine is definitely part of the facilities that you can imagine now. I think as soon as you can focus on the best way to collect information and what could be the use case that you can get from those data, I think that would make the difference for the customers. And it's so easy, you know, to test it. So if you are not fully convinced, I would say that you should try it, identify your first project, and quickly after you will totally realize that you can move away, you know, from all the database engine topics. It will be the old fashioned way, you know, to manage your data, definitely. And then you will be able to focus on use cases and also the way to optimize the use of it, for sure. So let's try, I would say.
Okay, so fascinating snippets there. Heikki, I'm going to share another slide that you sent to me earlier while you're going to give us your key takes.
Yeah, so in our view, the data is becoming the very core of a modern business. So every decision that we base is, we're doing it more and more based on data that we capture and analyze real time, not only kind of reports and analytics that we used to say track how we're doing, for example. And for us, the ability to collect and process data is thus a key success factor for pretty much every business. And kind of building on that, top of that, the faster we can run our development cycles, the better we are prepared to kind of meet these changing business needs and tackling those business problems and be competitive in what we do. For us, the being able to reutilize or reuse data to create new insights or create new services is kind of great driver for business to move forward. And with this in mind, database as a service can be a great tool in helping the teams to really focus on the core business problems and core business value and use the talent that is really hard to find on where it has the biggest impact. Maybe I can paraphrase this slide. It's this comes from Gartner, looking at how business are looking into database as a service as well. So here, Gartner says that with 75% of the databases by the end of this year, I guess, will be deployed in cloud. And the more we can have all of these in a managed fashion, the better we are able to really tackle the actual underlying business needs.
Wow. And it's incredible stats, those, and Gartner, they've got their finger on the pulse, I must admit. So that's what took me about these slides. They're very big numbers, I'd say, one skewed in one direction. Okay, Benedikt, you know, you've got some really incredible insight that you've offered on this call. What is your key takeaways for the listeners here?
Yeah, I think if you can give up control on your databases, as in you don't have to manage them themselves, you should probably do that, because for most businesses, like running or maintaining a database is not your business. So you should be focusing on what you do best and kind of outsource that, because it's so easy to do. I think this sums it up.
Beautiful way to sum it up. Hey, nice and succinct. Okay, so there you have it, folks. We are coming to the end here. Thank you, Heikki, Benedikt, and Stephane. You know, as I thought it was going to be a truly insightful look into the world of database as a service. I hope, you know, everyone found it as insightful as I did. Now, I'm sure you have many takeaways from this session, but a couple of light bulb moments for me. You know, firstly, we are all seeing a scarcity of IT skills. So these are exactly the kind of tools that can help sidestep that mundane work. After all, you know, doing the higher value stuff keeps everyone more enthusiastic, your staff engaged, and it produces better benefits for the business. So That is my number one. Secondly, I would say that struck me is it'll help if you work with partners that have implemented these kinds of solutions before. They can understand your strategy, highlight those bits that companies can sometimes overlook. Okay, and here I will do a shameless plug. OVHcloud and Aiven, we've got a partnership going here, and since we've teamed up, we've delivered many projects and can share that know-how and experience to ease your burden. So please do consider us. Okay, and finally to finish here, expect an email from me in a couple of days' time that will have the recording plus loads of other resources that'll help you on your database as a service journey. Expect a call from us to understand your projects and whether we can help you in any way. And obviously, do get in touch if you think we can help. Last thing, the next webinar is on May 10th, where I will be discussing the solutions and frameworks you should be looking at to accelerate the benefits of hybrid cloud for your business. Now, the registration details will be in the email that I send out. So until then, hope you make productive use of the tools we've talked about today, and goodbye.